Well-being is personal to each and every one of you, and it's different. And the truth about well-being is that what's important to me for well-being, what's important to Brendan for well-being, what's important to Michelle, who I can see, and Sophie, and Vicky, and Venus, and Maria, and Ginger, and Ray, and Sheila, and French. Every one of you have a different definition of well-being is, or actually you don't even have a definition. So you need to come up with what is your definition of well-being right now, at this moment in time. Because I promise you 10 years ago, the definition of well-being was different for you. Some of you, the definition of well-being pre-COVID was different. What is your personal definition of well-being? Once you've done that, is I want you to rate your current well-being on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Where are you today, right now? My wife taught me when I first started dating her that you can start your day over. Write that down. You can start your day over. Important thing about well-being, because you can, if something goes wrong and you're having a bad day, you can start your day over. I'll never forget back when my wife was my girlfriend, I'm talking to her at work and she's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm having the worst day." And I start telling her why. And she goes, "Did you know you can start your day over?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "You can just decide to start your day over." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Just decide." Like, I'm like, "Honey, it's 2:00. She's like, "Yep, you can start the whole day over." Like, oh, it's good to know. You can start your whole day over. Just knowing that can increase your well-being. You can start your week over. You can start your year over, my friends. Some of you had this huge list of stuff you had all planned for the year, and you're like, "Oh, I had this huge list, and I haven't even got to it." It's okay. You can start your year over. You can actually start your life over by choosing to start your life over. I want you to title today's talk, for me at least, as recharge time. Recharge time. And you're going to understand why it's recharge time. Because to me, well-being is all about the level in which you charge yourself up. And how many of you have one of these things called a phone, right? And here's the funny thing about the phone. Without you looking at your phone right now, you have a pretty good sense of whether or not your phone is fully charged, partially charged, or needs to be charged. Unfortunately, we don't have a charging monitor on ourselves to tell us, are we fully charged? Are we half charged? Are we almost completely depleted? And I know what it's like personally to run myself out of my battery completely. And you know what happens with phones? If you've had a phone for a while, there comes a point in time where you plug it in and it doesn't hold its battery as long. Do you know what I'm talking about? Right? Because when you get a new phone and the battery's fresh, you charge it up, battery stays charged. After you've had that phone for years, and I think part of this is rigged for us to buy new phones, before you know it, the battery can't be recharged fully. Happens to a lot of people. They stop being recharged and they get depleted. And then sometimes you need to actually replace your batteries. So I'm going to go through recharge time today, and I'm going to start by giving you number one, what you need to do. You need to take a fearless inventory of what you want in life and what you don't want in life. One of the fastest ways to improve your well-being is to get rid of the things in life that you don't want and to do more of what you do want. And man, does that sound simple, but it's not easy, because you have to really start to think, and you need to spend time on this, like taking out that journal, like, what is it in your life that you don't want right now? What is it in your life that's not working for you? Who's in your life that's not working for you? Who's in your life that is working for you? You need more of what works and less of what doesn't work. That's number one, taking a fearless inventory. Number two is you need to recognize that you need recharge time. You need to recognize that just like your phone, you have to become selfish and make sure that you are recharging yourself. And you have to get clear around, what does recharging yourself look like? Again, it's totally personal to each and every one of you. What are the activities that you do that fill you back up again? What do you do on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, a yearly basis? When you look at those people that have success and happiness and well-being, what you find is they all, first of all, have a daily practice. So that takes me to number 3, which is committing to recharge daily. Why did morning rituals become such a popular thing? I think it's because they work. I mean, honestly, when you look at people who are highly successful and happy and have well-being, they tend to have morning rituals. I never knew I had morning rituals until I started hearing about all these people who had morning rituals. And I'm like, oh my God, those are all the things that I do. My morning rituals are incredibly clear. Here's how I recharge daily. I'm going to go through just telling you what I do daily. The first thing I do in the morning is I meditate. I heard about meditation for 20 years before I did it. I heard Deepak Chopra talk about meditation 3 times personally. Third time I heard him talk about it. Yeah, it always made sense until I actually did it. So every morning I wake up and I meditate. Second thing I do is I take out my gratitude journal and I write out my gratitude for the day. I write out the 3 things I'm grateful for from yesterday, and I write down the 3 things I'm excited about for today, and then I write down the number 1 thing I'm going to do for the day that matters the most. It takes me about 3 to 4 minutes to do that in a journal. Then I exercise almost every single day. I exercise in the morning. Now I do that after I take, usually either it's before I get the kids ready for school or it's right after I get the kids off to school. And I also connect with my children every morning. That's my goal. Every morning, when I grew up, my father was off to work before I went to school, and he often came home after I went to bed. And so I made it a priority that in the morning I'm going to be up with my kids. I'm going to have breakfast with my kids. I'm going to take my 11-year-old down to put him on his bus, and then right now I'm driving the teenager to school because he wants a ride, and I can't believe I get the extra 15 minutes with him. And so I take the teenager to school, and then I come back and work out. And then the other part of my day is that I have clear priorities. So again, what does it mean to have clear priorities? My day's scheduled before the day starts. I know what my number 1 goal is for work. I know what my number 1 goal is personally meaning selfishly for myself. And I know what my number one goal is for family and friends. And I'll go through in a second why I have those categories, but they're specific. And I know, like today, my personal thing that I did for myself was I had a massage today for about 75 minutes. So it's like, ooh, I know. And by the way, now I have massages twice a week. It's part of my personal practice it increases my well-being, right? Today was a friend day. So today I had lunch with friends for 2 hours. And I have 2 days a week where I have friend day lunches. I have 2 days a week where I have wife lunches. So these things are scheduled into my week because I know when I do these things, my well-being is higher. Does this make sense? This takes me to number 4. The way I find more time in my life, you guys, is that I commit to unplug. So these phones that I was telling you about, this one right here, remember the movie Star Wars and the Death Machine? This is the death machine, I think, these phones, of well-being. One of the fastest ways to reduce your well-being is to spend an enormous amount of time on these phones. And so the fastest way to recognize how bad this issue is for you is to be going into these phones and looking at how much time do you spend on these phones a day. And Apple's got a little app in your phone. If you don't use it, it will tell you. And it will show you every week whether that usage is going up and down. And I used to spend way too much time on these phones. And so one of the things I learned from another person who was coaching me was the fastest way to start my day off wrong was to look at my phone in the morning. And why did I look at my phone in the morning? Because the phone was by my bed. I have charged my phone by my bed my entire life until last October. So starting last October, I made the decision to move the phone out of my bedroom. It stays in a different room, and I have an old-fashioned alarm clock, and I don't get on my phone now. I picked a time. I recommend you pick a time. I don't get on my phone until 10 o'clock. So from the moment I get up, all the things that I do, now I may use my phone for Google Maps, but I am not going through social media. I am not going through text. I'm not going through WhatsApp, and I'm not going through email until 10 o'clock because I've carved out that time for me because I have figured out in my life that my well-being is higher if I focus my day on myself in the morning without all the distractions that a phone creates. What's a formula for building resilience in your life? I came up with what I think are the three, at least for me, have been three key anchors, if you will, pillars to build resilience in my life. And so that's what I want to start with right now. And this is personal resilience. So the first thing is, number one, you have to recognize your resilience. I sat down, I really started thinking about my resilience, and particularly what I'm just dealing with right now is in my own case, it's the resilience of my health issue. It's the resilience of the pain that I'm in right now. And it's super easy for me, and I know for you, when things are going wrong, to go into my wife calls it a rabbit hole, right? Like you go into a hole of worry. And so for me, my worry is this surgery is not going to work. And if these stem cells that were implanted in my ankle don't work and my pain doesn't get reduced, there's just so much I can't do. And so then what's next? And I can go down a whole worry wall, almost like a wall of worry. And yet what I know is the fastest way to get out of worry is to work on what can be done, work on what can be changed. I made a list of some of the most difficult things I've ever gone through in my life, personally, professionally, physically. We forget what we've done in the past when we overcame things. So writing it all out for me was a reminder of yeah, I can do this. I'm right. I'm tough. I have courage. I have strength. So do you. The theme of this last book I wrote, The Latte Factor, it's funny. I've talked about this before. People think that this book was all about, if you haven't read it, people think, oh, it's about giving up your coffee. And no, it's not. The theme of the book was, for Zoe Daniels, the character, and all of us who read it, is that you are stronger than you think. You have more courage than you know. Your dreams deserve to become real. That's the core message. What I want to encourage you to do this month in your journal is I want to encourage you to write out and record your resilience. Make a list of what you've gone through this difficult. Now, somebody might think well, isn't this negative? Isn't it? Is it a negative thing to go back and remind yourself of what's difficult? And I don't think it is. I think it's actually a very positive thing because you can confront and remind yourself, hey, I did this. And guess what? I'm still standing. I'm still here. I've gotten through it. I've learned these lessons. I'm stronger from it. And that is a huge, huge part of building your resilience muscles. The second thing is that it's really important, not just to record and recognize your resilience, it's really important to reward your resilience. If I go back and I look at this week I just spent at Four Seasons Hawaii with my family, taking my parents away for their birthday, that was a fantastic example of rewarding my resilience, because the power was during that week, that was an extremely extravagant trip, but I could sit there and go man, all this hard work that I've done, this was a reward. Now that was a reward in spirit with my family. It's also a reward for myself. It doesn't have to be a big trip to reward yourself. There are lots of ways to reward yourself. You might have a big victory and the reward is you take your family out and you have dinner and you have, instead of a birthday cake, you have a resilience cake. And, you're here's what I've overcome. I mean, honestly, even doing this with your kids would be super powerful. Because if you've got children, letting your children know, mom went through this, or dad went through this, or we went through that, but we made it out the other end. And today we're going to have a resilience party. Come up with a way to reward yourself. Because when you reward your resilience, you remind yourself again that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So much of life and success and happiness and wealth and health is getting back up again after you've been knocked down. Getting up over and over and over again, not quitting. And that takes me to the third thing, which is rewire your resilience. So let me give you an example in my own life of how I literally just am doing this right now. And the reason I share these, my own life examples, is for a teaching lesson, but I'm going through it too. So, I had surgery in Utah, in Park City. My original plan had been to go live in Italy for a year and then move to Park City, because my plan had been that I was going to spend the next 10 years of my life doing a whole lot of skiing. And that plan's been adjusted right now because I can barely walk, much less ski. So I went and looked at real estate though when I was in Park City again. And there's a picture of me on Instagram where I'm on the bottom of the mountain at Deer Valley. And it's a picture of me smiling and I'm all happy. And I am happy. But I had a moment also at the bottom of the ski mountain where I had just looked at a piece of property and I had this super deep, sad ache in my heart where I literally was like, I can't buy a house here until I know I can ski. Because the thought of having a house at the bottom of Deer Valley and not being able to ski is something I just won't be able to do. And I actually went back to the realtor and told her, you know what? I got to wait 6 months and I need to see how I can feel, because it'll be too hard for me emotionally to have a ski house and not be able to ski. Then I had a couple days in Utah where I wasn't feeling well, where I was in huge pain, and I was bummed. And what I did to rewire this, because again, I'm using myself as an example. What I was doing that was bumming me out is I was making a list of all the things I can no longer do in my mind. I can't ski. I can't hike. I can't go for long walks with my wife. By the way, making a list of negative things in your mind is not helpful, right? I'm going through this list in my mind and then I go, you know what? What could you do? What could you do, David? I end up watching a movie about a woman who is paralyzed. Nicole Kidman's the star of the movie. And so she's paralyzed, she's depressed, she's feeling sorry for herself. I don't want to give the whole movie away, but she takes up kayaking. And the movie's based on a true story. At the end of the movie, you get to see a picture of the real woman it's based on. And I'm watching this movie and I'm like, I also know that there are people who have more problems than myself, but it doesn't matter, right? If you throw a pity party for yourself, the pity party is real. So back to rewiring your resilience, I turned around and made a list in my journal. What could be all the new things that I could take up that I don't do that wouldn't require me to have a great ankle? What else could I be doing? Oh, I could take up kayaking. Oh, I could take up swimming. And I started making the list of all the things that I could do. And then I also made a list of all the things I still can do. That's how you rewire yourself for resilience. So good to be with everyone here. Wow. What I want to do today is share with you a tool that I learned about 15 years ago that really changed my life, that allowed me to focus much better than I used to focus. And even though, I'm known as the financial person on GrowthDay, to me, the money is just a tool to help free you live your best life. I'm going to give you a tool today that you can use for money, but you can use it for your health. You can use it for your marriage. You can use it for being a parent. It looks simple, but it's complicated and hard to actually put in place. So I'm going to give you a couple quotes right now, and you can just write these quotes out. So number one is control your time or someone else will. The one thing in life that we actually can't get back is our time. You can lose money and you can make it again. You can lose friendships and you can get them back. The one thing you can't get back is your time. And I'm going to encourage you to learn how to put a wall around yourself and other people's request of your time if it's not truly what you want to focus on. So that's number one. Number two, deciding what not to do is often more important than what to do. People have recurring thoughts, everyone, all human beings. Number one is, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? We're always asking ourselves, am I going to be okay? It's literally wired into a 2.3 million year old brain of ours. Then once we get past the point sometimes of, am I going to be okay? The next question we're all running around with is, what am I going to do with my life? What happens so often when we have so many things on our plate, we say, well, I don't know what I want to do. And what I can tell you is when you start to strip away other people requesting your time and you don't have a long to-do list, you will start to be able to listen to your soul and figure out what it is you're supposed to do with your life. Which takes me to number three. Focusing is hard, scary, and confusing. And I can also tell you, it gets easier with time and it creates a beautiful life. That's the benefit, which takes me to number four. No is a complete sentence. And that takes me to number five, which is this idea that doing less allows you to live more. Let me go into with this story that changed my life. So what happened about a little over 15 years ago is that I was working on a big corporate partnership. And this was a financial service company that I was super excited to partner with. We prospect them. They reach back out to us. It's going to be this big, giant deal. And I come into my office and my assistant says to me and my team, I have some very bad news. You're going to want to sit down for this. And I go, what? And they're like, well, you're going to need to read the email. And I get this email from the founder of the company. And the email says, David, we were so excited to work on this partnership with you. I was really looking forward to being in business with you. But I'm really unfortunately sorry to say that it's not you, it's us. And we unfortunately are not going to be able to go forward on this partnership now. We're not saying, these are lines, my friends, that you can use yourself in so many ways. We are not saying no, we're saying not now. I hope we can continue the relationship maybe later. So fast forward about a year and a half, 2 years later, and I see that his business has been sold. And it's sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. And so I send him an email and I'm like, wow, congratulations. Like, you did it. And I'm so happy for you. And he immediately replies to me and he says, oh my gosh, David, it's so good to hear back from you. I'm so sorry we didn't go into business together. One of the reasons we didn't go business together is I was working on this whole thing to just pull off what we just did. And, he's like, but I'm coming through New York and I'd love to take you out for that cup of coffee. And he takes me to coffee and we have a beautiful breakfast together at a restaurant called Bubby's. And we go back to my office in Tribeca. And in my office, I had two giant whiteboards. On the left whiteboard was the year's goals. So that the whole company could come into my office and we'd have meetings and we'd look at this whiteboard. Here's what we're focused on for the year. And that whiteboard was completely filled. Then I had a second whiteboard of all the to-dos that we were working on. And that whiteboard was completely filled. So back to the story, calling him M, he comes into my office and he says, you asked me a question. What did you do differently that your competitors didn't do? And he said, we focused. He goes, want me to show you how we did it? Yeah, I would love to. He goes, okay. He turns around in the office and he goes, can I erase your whiteboards? And the erasers are sitting on the bottom of the whiteboard. And I go, yeah, sure. Well, first I go, yeah, okay, right? Someone's just made over $100 million. Yeah, you can erase my whiteboards. So we get the whiteboards totally clean. And he says, okay, and this is what he told me. He goes, I can't believe this, but this is the truth. He goes, I had an office like yours. I had a whole wall. The whole wall was our whiteboard. And we had all these goals on our whiteboard. And he said, one day there was a realization in the company that if we were going to survive, we had to focus because we were just scattered. and the board was putting heat on us to focus. And so we took and we had a week-long retreat, and we made a decision that we would focus in on one thing. And we would take our whiteboard, completely erase it, and put one thing on that whiteboard that we would focus on. He's like, what we literally did was put one thing on the left-hand side. We drew a line down the wall. We called that our yes now. It actually was like our number one to do. He called it the number one to do. He's like, and then we had a not to do list, which I now call the not now list. And he's like, everything that we were working on, and you, David, were one of those things, instead of just throwing it away, it literally got put on the not now list. And the entire company got restructured to focus on the one thing. And I'm like, well, how did that go over? And he's like, it was super hard because people are used to working on so many things and everything had to be revamped around one thing. He goes, but what happened is over time, he's like, when people would come into my office, because if you run a company, this happens, everyone comes in your office. And by the way, if you're a parent, the kids come in your room, right? There's always somebody coming in and wanting something from you. And he's like, when people would come in, if they were asking me to do something, work on something, want my feedback on something, I would ask the question immediately, is this related to our one thing that we're focused on? Because if it's not, then you can't even bring it to me. You can go put it over on the not now list, and the not now list had stickies, right? So like you can take it and put it on the not now. This was his thing. He'd make a sticky and and you can sign it, and we might look at it later, but we're not looking at it now. Remember, we made this commitment for the next year that we're focused on this one thing. And ultimately, because he focused on this one thing and that one thing worked, and basically they tripled down and quadrupled down on what was working best, that's what allowed him to sell the company for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. I got so much to talk about. I got pages and pages of notes we're going to go through today. I've been teaching this stuff for 27 years. The reason I love teaching about money is not so much, believe it or not, because I want you to have a certain amount of money. It's not so much the money as what the money can do for you. And here's what I believe about personal finance. I believe that when you fix your finances, you free yourself to live your best life. And I believe that when you fix your finances, you free your soul to fly. Learning about money can be simple. It can be easy. It can be fun. And the most important thing, it can be actionable. Let's control the controllables. So you want to build wealth, we got to control the controllables. And I'm going to take you on the journey, a little bit, not all of it, but I'm going to take you on the journey that is inside this book, The Automatic Millionaire. I'm going to walk you through this concept of how to build wealth by paying yourself first automatically. Super simple, but life-changing. So I'm going to share the 5 questions with you because then you can ask them to yourself, and then ultimately you can ask this of other people. These are the questions that will determine if you'll build financial security. Question number 1, do you want to be rich? Yes? How many of you would just like to be out of debt? Does anybody want to admit to that? Like, I just want to be out of debt. Okay. How many of you are like, I don't need to be rich. I just want to be financially secure. You see, if you just want to be financially secure, right? So here's the question behind this question. Why do you want what you want? I learned young that for most people, money is not enough to actually motivate them to do all the work that needs to be done to become wealthy. There's all kinds of obstacles that will come in your way to building wealth. You can't get rich in days. It takes decades typically. But when you are clear on what's most important to you and it's based on your values, when you answer the question for yourself, I want to be financially secure because of, and it's a value answer. I want to protect my family. I want to pass a legacy to my children. I want to give back to my church. I want to be able to give back to my community. When you can answer the question with your core values, you will then become an unstoppable force because your values will pull you through the difficult times to achieve your goals. One of the biggest reasons people fail financially is the way they spend their money is actually in conflict with their values. When your values are clear, your financial decisions become easier. This takes me to question number 2. And question number 2 is this: do you pay yourself first? When you pay yourself first, what you show yourself every day is that you're putting yourself first. How much to pay yourself first? 1 hour a day of your income minimum. So whatever you're earning, that first hour a day from 9 to 10, that's got to come off the top and go into a retirement account. Now in the United States, that would be an IRA account, or that would be a 401k plan. If you're self-employed, it would be a SEP, self-employed retirement account. Now, again, I can't go through every single country, but like in Canada, it'd be like an RSP account. So you got to do your own research on what account it is. But the most important thing is the math. 1 hour a day of your income is 12.5% of your gross income. Now, I will tell you this, that's a minimum number that you should save. That's not a maximum number, it's a minimum number. Your goal should be minimum 1 hour a day of your income. For those of you who are self-employed, it should be minimum, your goal should be 15% or more of your income going to you automatically for yourself. This is what's going to give you financial confidence, knowing that you're taking your income and putting it away for yourself for the future. Why don't people do this? Do you want to be rich? Do you pay yourself first? The third thing was this: do you save 1 hour a day of your income? Which takes me to question number 4. And that is, do you save money automatically? How does the average American build wealth on an ordinary income? They save money automatically. I started my career at Morgan Stanley. I was there for 9 years as a financial advisor. It used to be complicated to save money automatically. Like if you came to my office, they were called systematic investment plans, and the paperwork was like 7 pages long. But we would encourage all of our clients, anybody who came to my seminars, even if you're just saving $50 a month, we would encourage our clients to save automatically. And the reason was, what we saw firsthand is that no one would save for more than 2 to 3 months unless it was automatic. People would say, oh, no, I'm super disciplined. I don't need to do it this way. People used to be afraid to have money taken from their paychecks and invested automatically. That's really not the case anymore. But people were afraid to do this movement of their money automatically. But the problem is people wouldn't save unless it was automated. So many Americans, and this is also true all over the world, so many people have built wealth because they just set something up once, forgot about it, left it alone, and next thing you know, 20 years go by, 25 years go by, 30 years go by, and they've built massive wealth because the savings was automatic. The key is automation. The key is no budget. Budgeting takes time. Budgeting creates fights. Budgeting is boring. Automation is beautiful. Which takes me to question number 5. Do you know what your latte factor is? People always say to themselves and to me, I don't have the money to save automatically. I can't do that. And so I started showing people, what small amounts of money, $5 a day, $10 a day could change your life. And it can, by the way, can completely change your life. You got to start somewhere. But if you don't believe you have the money and you tell yourself that, you'll never save. So the thing about $5 a day is you start saving in your 20s, you can have $1 million by the time you reach retirement. Now, it's not enough. $5 a day now is not enough. You need to save more than that. But you need to figure out what your latte factor is. Nobody's probably going to Starbucks right now. You're making coffee at home. Oh my God, and guess what? You survived. People would say to me, I cannot give up my coffee. There's no way. And somehow we've all survived making coffee at home for a year. Some of you here have a lot more money than you actually had a year ago because you're not spending anything, right? You're not eating out. You're not going out for coffee. Our expenses have been reduced. When we start to go back to a new normal, the question becomes, do you keep some of these good habits, or do you just go out and spend money again? Now, one of the reasons the market's up so much is because we're expecting everybody to rush out and spend a ton of money and everybody ready to party. I want to show you something based on this idea of partying. What do you think it costs to blow $10,000 a year? It's $27.40 a day. What it takes to blow $10,000 in a year is $27.40 a day, which is less than most people make an hour. $27.40 a day in the US, and you can blow that so easily, right? That's $10,000 in a year. For many of you, that would build your emergency account. That would start your retirement account. What happens if you took that money and you invested? I know it's a lot of money, $27 a day, but what would happen? In 20 years, if you were in the S&P 500 fund and the market did what it's done the last 30 years, you'd have $572,000. What if it went out 30 years? $27.40 a day. You'd have $1,644,000 in 30 years. What if I went out 40 years? This is where the numbers go crazy. You'd have $4,424,000 potentially. By the way, did you just see that astronomical growth? Because sometimes if you don't really know compound interest, this is the miracle of compound interest. This is the part that blows the mind away. How can this go from $572,000 and in 10 years be worth 3 times more, and in 20 years be worth almost 10 times more? That's because money's making money. And that's the whole key.
This can be your day for personal growth. This can be that day you committed to and you remember and you go, that was the day I got myself a community. I got better coaches. I committed to making my life the absolute best that I could. This is that day. Make today your growth day. Click the button on this page and sign up right now.